Do you have something that you truly, relentlessly desire? Despite your state of life, is there something else that you would go completely to the end of the world to get? Well, luckily for you, there's a way to achieve what you're looking for. And you won't need to go to the end of the world to get it. But you will need to go somewhere, in a place maybe too out of reach for some. It's not far away, closer than one may believe, but there's requirements that some individuals may not meet. First, whatever it is that you seek, know that you must truly desire what you want. In your eyes, it should be something you need. If you begin the journey without the correct state of mind, you will surely fail, as it will be near impossible to turn back once the journey starts. The second requirement is that you will need a vehicle of sorts. Most use a car, as it's the most comfortable choice. There have been a select few that have used small motorized vehicles, such as an ATV or a motorcycle, but this has proven to be quite difficult, as the conditions of the journey can prove to be too bothersome. Do not use a vehicle too large or noticeable, as you will need some of the cover of night to be most safe. Also, while any sort of car will do, you may not want to choose the most expensive or cherished vehicle. You can take your new slick black Mercedes for the drive if you'd like, but don't expect it to come out in a pristine state. Make sure your vehicle is completely fueled before beginning the drive. The first task to accomplish is to locate the road. It doesn't have a name, it's not on the map, and technically, it doesn't even exist. It will only show up if you're looking for it at the right time, and you will only spot it if you know what to look for. Finally, you must be alone during the journey. You didn't think you'd be able to go with a group, did you? It must be night when you begin. Choose the time of the night where you believe the roads are the least populated. Drive to any area that is just a stretch of road surrounded by woods. Here's where you'll want to start paying close attention. If you're looking for the road, it will turn up eventually, but you'll need to search for the road's hint in order to pull down the right one. Once you're close, you will see or feel its signs, but what the signs will be will depend on what it is you truly desire. For example, if you're in search of wealth, you may spot shimmers on the empty branches of trees as if they resemble the shine of gold or diamonds. If you seek love, you may begin to see rose petals slowly dance in the light breeze, blowing in the road's direction. If you seek revenge, you might sense an ever-growing feeling of heat or anger in your body as you approach. Just know what it is you really want, and you'll have no problem finding the turn. Once you're sure you've found the revealed road, take a deep breath and turn down it. At this point, you have officially started down the nameless road, which brings you through 11 miles, leading to whatever it is you seek. Each mile will test your desire and will expose if you really do want what you're searching for. Before you go any further, stop the car and be wary of a few advisements. Do not turn on the radio during the drive. Do not use a phone during the drive. Reception will be cut off anyway. Do not open the windows during the drive. Make sure they are closed before you continue. If you are riding a vehicle without windows or a top, then prepare for the worst, as the odds are heavily against you. Do not attempt to leave your vehicle at any time. You will never want to exceed 30 miles per hour, unless you're desperate to make it through a section of the road. And most importantly, as with any drive, buckle up. Feel free to prepare and make sure you're ready. Once the road has been entered, time has stopped, so you don't need to worry about losing the night. Though you may not notice, you're not actually in your own world anymore. Take one last moment to realize that once the first mile is over, there is no turning back. If you ponder turning back at all, know that you shouldn't even be on this journey in the first place. Once all is done, continue on the road ahead. On the first mile, you won't see much change. The road passes through mostly woods, with a few miles being an exception. The air will turn a bit cooler, in which you should turn on your heating system if the vehicle has one. You won't want to take your eyes off the road later. Take some time to calm any uneasiness by admiring some of the night sky. You'll see it completely lined with stars, more than what you would ever believe possible. If the weather was cloudy beforehand, you'll also notice that the sky is now clear. On the second mile, the air will become even colder. This is primarily the reason why traveling in an open vehicle is very difficult. With each mile, the air will drop in temperature, even if the season should be warm. If the air is too cold to bear, even with the heat on, your only option is to speed up. With each mile, the road also becomes more complex, taking more turns and showing an increasing amount of road hazards. Be sure to always keep focused on the road in front of you in order to avoid as many bumps or obstacles as possible. Hitting a few rocks and potholes won't hamper your progress too much, but you'll want to keep in the best condition for as long as possible. If your vehicle is forced to a stop because of damage, then there's nothing left you can do but eventually freeze to death. On the 3rd mile, you may begin to spot silhouettes of human figures in the linings of trees. Pay no attention to them, even if they seem to get closer. It will be hard to resist peeking at their unnerving, distant appearance, but know that they will reveal themselves later. At this mile, the road will become dirt if you weren't driving on it in the beginning. Keep to the center of the path, as it will become narrow and wide at random intervals. On a quick side note, should you ever attempt to turn around, despite the previous warnings, you'll be left on a path which never ends. You will simply run out of fuel eventually, and be left to freeze in the cold conditions. On the 4th mile, you will not only see more of the figures, but you will begin in a sense to hear them. In the back of your mind, a very faint, unintelligible whisper will echo. These will come and go, but you can't stop them. If they become bothersome or distracting, try and tune them out by thinking of what it is you desire. Attempting to listen and determine what the voices are saying will only attract them to you, and you want to be as far away from them as you can. They'll be closer later, so there's no point in bringing them near you this early. On the 5th mile, you will come to a clearing. The lining of trees to your left will disappear to reveal a lake with no end, with a beaming great moon over the water. The illumination from the moon will be so spectacular that the vehicle's headlights will no longer be required. Restrain yourself from gazing at it. If you look at its light for even more than a few seconds, the road in front of you will end, throwing your vehicle into the water in which you will freeze in mere minutes. The voices will be gone for this mile, but don't rejoice yet. They'll be back. On the 6th mile, take into account that you're more than halfway done. Despite the progress, you may lose hope here. The stars will have disappeared at this point, leaving the sky an empty, black abyss. The clearing will have ended, leading you back into the woods. The only light you will have will be provided by your vehicle's headlights, but they will flicker from time to time, even if you're sure they're in perfect working order. If you have a radio in the vehicle, it will turn on here automatically. If you didn't turn it off beforehand, it will produce an overwhelming screech that will send you off your path. A calm voice will then begin to speak about your greatest fears, what it is you are horrified of in your life. It will speak in a way that will cause you to visualize the words in your mind, so don't listen to it. If you begin to comprehend what it is saying, the horrors will prove too much for you to stay on the road safely. Attempting to turn off the radio will prove no use. Speed up if you need to, just to keep your mind off the voice as long as you can. As you approach the end of the mile, the voice will fade out of the speakers, leaving your ears at peace for now. On the 7th mile, the voices from the figures will return. It won't sound like a whisper this time, but more like distant screams, growing closer with each second. At some point on this mile, you will hear one of them in your ear, as if one of them were right behind you. This is because one of the figures have found their way into your vehicle. Do not turn around. Their faces will shock you into paralysis, leading you off the road. If you don't draw attention to it, it will become uninterested and hopefully leave. These beings are said to be ones who have traveled down the road before, but were not successful. They live the remainder of their existence suffering in the darkness, with their only goal being to bring other travelers down with them. It has been said from experience that these beings can't physically harm you, so as long as they don't cause you to wreck, you should be fine. On the 8th mile, slow down if you're going too fast. The road here takes very sharp turns, which if overshot will throw your vehicle into a pit through the trees. The cold is near fatal here. If you were to have a glass or bottle of liquid in your vehicle, it would be solid in seconds. The heating system will have become completely obsolete. Your headlights will flicker more, sometimes shutting off for a few seconds. You should brake if this happens, but do not completely stop. The figures will be following you at this point, and should you stop for too long, they will surround and trap your vehicle. More of their screams can be heard from outside your doors, sometimes even sounding maniacal laughter. Their hands will claw at your windows, desperate to reach in and feel something living. Do not look at them. They won't block your windshield, and the last thing you want to happen is to crash and be trapped with them. If you don't make it from here, pray that it's the freezing that ends you. On the 9th mile, your vehicle will stall. The headlights will shut off, as will all other systems inside. There's nothing you can do to prevent this. What you will need to do is close your eyes and immediately attempt to restart the vehicle. Keep your eyes closed, as the figures will have surely surrounded you at this point. The starting of the vehicle will frighten them, and they will all back away temporarily. This will give you a chance to start moving forward again. If you begin to hear the windows crack from their struggle, don't lose focus. The beings can alter the vehicle, but remember that they still do not have the strength to physically affect you. You will hear nothing but their voices rampage in your mind, as there could be anywhere between a dozen or 100 after you now. Once you start the vehicle, floor it. Floor it so long as you can stay on the path. When the mile's done, the beings will retreat. On the 10th mile, the voices of the beings will stop. If you were to look in your rearview mirror, do not actually do this. You will see them following you, but not as if they were chasing. They're watching you as if they were seeing you off. As you go down the 10th mile, the road will be smoother, as if you were back on the 1st mile. The figures will be lining the sides of the path ahead of you. They won't be after you, but they will watch you as you pass. Some have theorized that the beings are impressed here, that you have come a long way on the journey to what you desire. This is false. They are not impressed, but they are happy. They are happy you're about to approach the next mile, and they are happy because you are most likely going to your death. On the 11th and final mile, everything in your vehicle will lose power, as it did on the 9th mile. The vehicle will normally be immobile, but you will still be moving. An unknown force will be pulling you forward. In the darkness, you will see a glowing red light up ahead, as if it were a light at the end of the tunnel. Close your eyes and cover them. Do whatever it takes to make sure that you do not see what you are about to go through. Covering your ears would also be helpful, but keeping your eyes covered should be a higher priority. The red light is another clearing, but there's no moon or lake this time. Once it's entered, unrelenting and inconceivable noises will surround you from all directions. No amount of bravery and conditioning will spare you from these sounds. The cold will turn into a merciless heat, burning all parts of your vehicle. You will feel the illusion of the flesh being burned off of your bones, that every part of you is being destroyed as you travel through screams and audible suffering. As long as you keep your eyes closed and resist the urge to see where you are, you will survive through the suffering. This will last a total of 31 seconds, but many fail to keep their vision closed during that time and are left to the worst fate of the road. Where is this mile located? Those who have survived do not know. Some have named it the transmission from hell, but whether it's part of hell is debatable. After the final mile, power will return. Stop the vehicle. Take a moment to possibly regain some of your sanity. Let the screaming in your ears begin to fade, and know that you have nearly completed your journey with the hardest task overcome. Breathe and begin the drive forward once again. After only a kilometer, your vehicle will arrive at a dead end. Stop here and do not attempt to move again. Nothing will happen right this second, but do not be disappointed. Relax and close your eyes. Imagine in your mind what it is you desire the entire time. It will most likely still be the same as when you entered, but with some, this desire may actually change through making this journey. Think about what it was that you went through such terrifying and difficult means to acquire, and imagine possessing it in your hands. Once you have completely visualized this, slowly open your eyes. You will find yourself at the beginning of the unnamed road, where you first began. This may confuse you, but know that you are finished. Your task is done. Your mind will then turn to your reward. If what you desired was material, check in the back seat, or in the trunk if your object is larger. If the object was small enough, it might already be in your pocket. If what you desired was non-material, then do not be disappointed if the change is not immediate. Turn back to where you came from, and you will find in your life that what you wanted is there. You may have found the love of your dreams. You may have gained unnatural, unimaginable power. You may have put your most hated enemy to the most satisfying revenge possible. You will have no doubt gained what you desired. So now that the task is done, what's the catch? Is your vehicle cursed? Is there something you're about to lose? Is your death imminent? The answer to all is no, of course. You've done the challenge. You've proved worthy of what you desire. As stated before, the sounds of the 11th mile will continue to exist in your mind, potentially causing you some vivid and unusual nightmares. But these should prove as nothing compared to what you've gained. Now, one last question. Is there something else you desire? Are you not yet satisfied? After all, you're left right back where you started. The road's right in front of you. So are you up for another drive? If so, buckle up and just move forward. I first met in person with Mary E. in the summer of 2007. I had arranged with her husband of 15 years, Terrence, to see her for an interview. Mary had initially agreed, since I was not a newsman, but rather an amateur writer, gathering information for a few early college assignments, and if all went according to plan, some pieces of fiction. We scheduled an interview for a particular weekend when I was in Chicago, on unrelated business, but at the last moment, Mary changed her mind and locked herself in the couple's bedroom, refusing to meet with me. For half an hour, I sat with Terrence as we camped outside the bedroom door, I listening and taking notes, while he attempted fruitlessly to calm his wife. The things Mary said made little sense, but fit with the pattern I was expecting. Though I could not see her, I could tell from her voice that she was crying, and more often than not, her objections to speaking with me centered around an incoherent diatribe on her dreams, her nightmares. Terrence apologized profusely when we ceased the exercise, and I did my best to take it in stride, recalling that I wasn't a reporter in search of a story, but merely a curious young man in search of information. Besides, I thought at the time I could find perhaps another similar case if I put my mind and resources to it. Mary E. was the SISOP for a small Chicago-based bulletin board system in 1992, when she first encountered Smile.jpg, and her life changed forever. She and Terrence had been married for only 5 months. Mary was one of the estimated 400 people who saw the image when it was posted as a hyperlink on the BBS. Though she is the only one who has spoken openly about the experience, the rest have remained anonymous or perhaps dead. In 2005, when I was only in the 10th grade, Smile.jpg was first brought to my attention by my burgeoning interest in web-based phenomena. Mary was the most often cited victim of what is sometimes referred to as smile.dog. The being Smile.jpg is reputed to display. What caught my interest, other than the obvious macabre elements of the cyber legend and my proclivity towards such things, was the sheer lack of information. usually to the point that people don't believe it even exists other than as a hoax or a rumor. It is unique because, though the entire phenomenon centers on a picture file, that file is nowhere to be found on the internet. Certainly many photo-manipulated copies litter the web, showing up with the most frequency on sites such as the image board 4chan, particularly the X-Focus Paranormal subboard. It is suspected that these are fakes because they do not have the effect of the true smile.jpg, namely sudden onset temporal lobe epilepsy and acute anxiety. The purported reaction in the viewer is one of the reasons the phantom-like smile.jpg is regarded with such disdain, since it is patently absurd, though depending on whom you ask, the reluctance to acknowledge smile.jpg's existence might just be as much out of fear as it is out of disbelief. Neither smile.jpg nor smile.dog is mentioned anywhere on Wikipedia, though the website features articles on such other, perhaps more scandalous shock sites as hello.jpg or Two Girls One Cup. Any attempt to create a page pertaining to smile.jpg is summarily deleted by any of the encyclopedia's many admins. Encounters with smile.jpg are the stuff of internet legend. Mary E's story is not unique. There are unverified rumors of smile.jpg showing up in the early days of Usenet, and even one persistent tale that in 2002, a hacker flooded the forums of humor and satire website Something Awful with a deluge of smile.dog pictures, rendering almost half the forum's users at the time epileptic. It is also said that in the mid to late 90s, that smile.jpg circulated on Usenet and as an attachment of a chain email with the subject line, "Smile, God loves you." Yet despite the huge exposure these stunts would generate, there are very few people who will admit to have experienced any of them, and no trace of the file or any link has ever been discovered. Those who claim to have seen smile.jpg often weakingly joke that they were far too busy to save a copy of the picture to their hard drive. However, all alleged victims offer the same description of the photo. A dog-like creature, usually described as appearing similar to a Siberian husky, illuminated by the flash of the camera, sits in a dim room. The only background detail that is visible is a human hand extending from the darkness near the left side of the frame. The hand is empty, but is usually described as beckoning. Of course, most attention is given to the dog, or dog creature, as some victims are more certain than others about what they have claimed to see. The muzzle of the beast is reputably split in a wide grin, revealing 2 rows of very white, very straight, very sharp, very human-looking teeth. This is of course not a description given immediately after viewing the picture, but rather a recollection of the victims, who claim to have seen the picture endlessly repeated in their mind's eye during the time they are in reality having epileptic fits. These fits are reported to continue indeterminably, often while the victims sleep, resulting in very vivid and disturbing nightmares. These may be treated with medication, though in some it is more effective than others. Mary E., I assumed, was not on effective medication. That's why after my visit to her apartment in 2007, I sent out feelers to several folklore and urban legend-oriented news groups, websites, and mailing lists, hoping to find the name of a supposed victim of smile.jpg who felt more interested in talking about his experiences. For a time, nothing happened, and at length I forgot completely about my pursuits, since I had begun my freshman year of college and was quite busy. Mary contacted me via email, however, near the beginning of March 2008. To jml@redacted.com. From Mary E. @redacted.net. Subject line: Last summer's interview. Dear Mr. L., I am incredibly sorry about my behavior last summer when you came to interview me. I hope you understand that it was no fault of yours, but rather my own problems that led me to act out as I did. I realize that I could have handled the situation more decorously. However, I hope you will forgive me. At the time, I was afraid. You see, for 15 years, I have been haunted by smile.jpg. Smile.dog comes to me in my sleep every night. I know that sounds silly, but it's true. This is an inevitable quality about my dreams, my nightmares, that makes them completely unlike any real dreams I have ever had. I do not move and I do not speak. I simply look ahead, and the only thing ahead of me is the scene from that horrible picture. I see the beckoning hand, and I see Smile.dog. It talks to me. It's not a dog, of course, though I'm not quite sure what it is. It tells me it will leave me alone only if I do as it asks. All I must do, it says, is spread the word. That is how it phrases its demands. I know exactly what it means. It wants me to show it to someone else. And I could. The week after my incident, I received in the mail a manila envelope with no return address. Inside was only a 3.5-inch floppy diskette. Without having to check, I knew precisely what was on it. I thought for a long time about my options. I could show it to a stranger, a co-worker. I could even show it to Terrence, as much as the idea disgusted me. And what would happen then? Well, if Smile.dog kept its word, I could sleep. If it lied, what would I do? And who was to say something worse would not come for me if I did as the creature asked? So I did nothing for 15 years, though I kept the diskette hidden amongst my things. Every night for 15 years, Smile.dog has come to me in my sleep and demanded that I spread the word. For 15 years I have stood strong, but there have been hard times. Many of my fellow victims on the BBS board when I first encountered smile.jpg stopped posting. I heard some of them committed suicide. Others remained completely silent, simply disappearing off the face of the web. They're the ones I worry about the most. I sincerely hope you will forgive me, Mr. L, but last summer when you contacted me and my husband about an interview, I was near the breaking point. I decided I was going to give you the floppy diskette. I did not care if Smile.dog was lying or not. I wanted it to end. You were a stranger, someone I had no connection with, and I thought I would not feel sorrow when you took the diskette as part of your research and sealed your fate. Before you arrived, I realized what I was doing. I was plotting to ruin your life. I cannot stand the thought, and in fact, I still cannot. I am ashamed, Mr. L, and I hope that this warning will dissuade you from further investigation of smile.jpg. You may in time encounter someone who is, if not weaker than I, then wholly more depraved. Someone who will not hesitate to follow the dog's orders. Stop while you are still whole. Sincerely, Mary E. Terrence contacted me later that month with the news that his wife had killed herself. While cleaning up various things she had left behind, closing email accounts and the like, he happened upon the above message. He was a man in shambles. He wept as he told me to listen to his wife's advice. He found the diskette, he revealed, and burned it until it was nothing but a stinking pile of blackened ash. The part that most disturbed him, however, was how the diskette had hissed as it melted, like some sort of animal, he said. I will admit that I was a little uncertain about how to respond to this. At first I thought perhaps it was a joke, with the couple belatedly playing with the situation in order to get a rise out of me. A quick check of several Chicago newspapers online, however, proved that Mary E. was indeed dead. There was, of course, no mention of suicide in the article. I decided that, for at least the time being, I would not further pursue the subject of smile.jpg, especially since I had finals coming up in the end of May. But the world has odd ways of testing us. Almost a full year after I'd returned from my disastrous interview with Mary E., I received another email to jml@redacted.com from elzahir82@redacted.com. Subject line: Smile. Hello. I found your email address through a mailing list. Your profile said you were interested in Smile.dog? I have saw it. It is not as bad as everyone says. I have sent it to you here, just spreading the word. The final line chilled me to the bone. According to my email client, there was one file attachment called, naturally, smile.jpg. I considered downloading it for some time. It was most likely a fake, I imagined, and even if it weren't, I was never wholly convinced of smile.jpg's peculiar powers. Mary E.'s account had shaken me, yes, but she was probably mentally unbalanced anyway. After all, how could a simple image do what smile.jpg was set to accomplish? What sort of creature was it that could break one's mind with only the power of the eye? And if such things were patently absurd, then why did the legend exist at all? If I downloaded the image, if I looked at it, and if Mary turned out to be correct, if smile.dog came to me in my dreams, demanding I spread the word, what would I do? Would I live a life as Mary had, fighting against the urge to give in until I died? Or would I simply spread the word, eager to be put to rest? And if I chose the latter route, how could I do it? Whom would I burden in turn? If I went through with my earlier intention to write a short article about smile.jpg, I decided I could attach it as evidence, and anyone who read the article, anyone who took interest, would be affected. And even assuming the smile.jpg attached to the email was genuine, would I be capricious enough to save myself in that manner? Could I spread the word? Yes. Yes, I could. The gray wolves of Virginia were made extinct over 100 years ago. According to the regular surveys with the National Forestry Service, no sign of any such animal has been found since 1900. The occasional reports of large predators just after dusk or late at night, usually by the occasional hiker or party of campers in the Stillwood, residents of Lower Alethea nearest the woods like myself know better than to try, received the same tired reply from animal control. There are no wolves in the Stillwood. When a pet gets lost in the dark of the Stillwood and never returns, or worse is found mauled, the blame falls on the usual suspects: foxes, wild dogs, or teenagers with too much time and too little compassion. A few years back, when the Bradleys, a little family brand new to the Falls, had their boy David go missing from their own backyard, never finding more than scraps of his jacket and a little blood at the edge of the forest. The official response was adamant. This was a kidnapping, not an animal attack. Old-timers like me just shook our heads and muttered to ourselves, there are no wolves in the Stillwood. So if you want to sleep at night this close to the forest, keep your doors locked tight and your shutters closed fast, if just to buy some peace of mind or to stop you from catching a glimpse of the Stillwood late at night. And should you somehow find yourself walking near, or God forbid, through the woods some evening, head home as quick as you can. Try to ignore the sounds of the night wind, howling as it does. It will only make your imagination run wild. And should you see what cannot be polychrome eyes, shining through the mists of the underbrush or somehow in the branches above, should you be blessed enough to make it safely home, take what comfort you can in this thought. There are no wolves in the Stillwood. You're lying in your bed. The dull whirring of your air conditioner is the only thing separating you from total silence. You know, that particular silence that is so heavy and so thick, it's almost the equivalent of a loud noise itself. That kind of silence where you could hear a pin drop from 3 rooms away. The kind of silence that fills your ears with the sound of your own heartbeat as your ear presses against your pillow. That kind of silence. The dull whirring is the only noise you can hear, a noise that typically goes unnoticed until it is the only noise present. It's comforting whether you realize it or not, a sort of white noise. But suddenly, your room is back at the temperature specified on the thermostat, and the whirring comes to a stop as the vent makes a dull clang. To your misfortune, you are not yet asleep, and the silence sets in. You should be comforted by the knowledge that you could hear anything and everything in your surroundings, making up for the lack of vision provided by the darkness. But you aren't. It's this very environment that sets you on edge, causes your heart to beat a bit faster, makes your body tense without explanation, and that makes you aware when you are not alone. But you are alone, right? You've been laying there with your eyes closed for almost 15 minutes now, and you made sure everything was normal in your room before you turned off the light. You're a smart one. All those Facebook quizzes you took have just reinforced what you already know. If you were in a horror movie, you would survive until the end. You even made a carefully laid plan of what you would do in any sort of situation you've read about online. But that stuff is just nonsense anyway, right? You aren't scared. Or at least that's what you keep telling yourself. But wait, what was that? Was that the rustling of fabric? But you didn't shift in your bed, or make any movement. Did you make that noise? No, you couldn't have. You're paralyzed in your bed, stiff with an unease that was not present until this very moment. You must have imagined it. You must have. You roll over to face the wall. Out of sight, out of mind. If there's something in the room with you, you will just have to accept that you are much too tired to deal with it at the moment. You're still stricken with uneasiness as you hear rustling again. This time, the rustling is accompanied by a soft thud on the ground. Your heart seizes in your chest. Did you really just hear that? No, you just gotten yourself worked up about nothing. You really should stop playing horror survival games so late at night. It's messing with your brain. You're a rational person. Stop acting so childish and just fall asleep already. You close your eyes tightly, silently hoping sleep would whisk you away soon. You're practically begging for the safety of the non-existent dream world of your own creation. You're running away in a sense. But there's nothing there, right? You're just tired. I know. As your eyes are clenched tightly shut, you become aware that no matter how much you want to, you can no longer move your arms or legs. Come on now, are you really letting this get to you? What are you, 12 years old? Suck it up and fall asleep already. Now, more tense than ever, that unnerving sound echoes across the room again. The rustling of fabric, followed by a soft thud on the ground. Unwittingly, you're holding your breath now, eyes shut as tightly as possible. You have a childish urge to pull the blanket over your head. You're imagining it all. It's all in your head. I thought you were better than this. Your heart is pounding loudly in your ears now, but not loudly enough to drown out the now repetitive sound approaching from across the room. What is that rustling? Maybe you left some paper on the ground? That has to be it. And that thumping? Probably the cat or the dog or something. They probably ran in when you weren't looking before you closed your door. Yeah, you're just paranoid. The noise is now within a foot of your bed, and with your back to it, you don't dare turn around to investigate. Not that it would do you much good. The only light in your room is the dull glow of your cell phone on the nightstand next to you. You plugged it in before you crawled into bed, remember? But you don't dare turn around and look. There's nothing there anyways. Minutes that feel like hours pass as you face your wall, stiff as a board, unable to will yourself to move. You haven't heard the noises in a while now, and since it reached the edge of your bed, you know there's nothing there, silly. It's the silence. It's messing with you. You really should have turned on some music or something before you went to bed. Oh well, maybe next time. Suddenly, a familiar clang echoes through the room. followed by that familiar whirring. You exhale deeply, your body relaxing as you are flooded with relief. Thank God that's over. Now you can finally sleep in peace. The silence was really getting to you. You roll over and open your eyes to check the time on your lit cell phone. It must have been at least an hour since you first went to bed. You are greeted face to face with his ear-to-ear grin. Dimly lit sockets where eyes once resided stare intently at you.
I see you're still awake.
Some people might recall some momentary buzz caused a couple of years ago by a particularly odd Morrowind mod. The file name was jvk1166z.esp. The mod was never posted on any of the larger Elder Scrolls communities, usually just smaller boards and role-playing groups. In a few cases, the mod was also PM or emailed to a select chosen few. jvk1166z.esp was only up for a few days to the best of my knowledge. The reason this mod caused such a buzz was because it was a virus, or at least it seemed to be. If you tried to run the game with the mod active, it would hang at the initial load screen for a full hour and then crash to the desktop. If you had let it get that far, your install of Morrowind, along with all of your save files, would become completely corrupted. Nobody could exactly figure out what the mod was trying to do, since it couldn't be opened in the construction set. Eventually, warnings were distributed not to download and use the mod if you found it, and then things just died down from there. However, after a year later, during 2008 in a mod board I used to frequent, someone popped up with the mod again. He said he was PM'd by a lurker who deleted his account immediately after sending it. He also said that the person advised him to try playing the mod through DOSBox. Despite the fact that the game wasn't designed to run in DOSBox, when he tried to run Morrowind in it with JVK enabled, it actually worked sort of. Obviously there were some issues. The game was a bit laggy and you couldn't really get into the options menu, nor the load game menu, the console, or really anything else other than the start menu in the main game itself. The quick save and quick load hop buttons worked, but that was it. And the quick save only saves your data so long as the game doesn't close, so you couldn't really reload your character later if you had to call it a night or if the game crashed. Some of the others on the mod board speculated that the modded install of Morrowind used an older graphics renderer, making DOSBox necessary, but it didn't really look any different. The following details are a first-hand account from when I had first played JVK, as the board came to call it. I stopped after a certain point that I'll get into later, but until then, just know that this is all of my personal experience. Upon starting a new game in JVK, when you leave the tutorial zone of the census office, after getting off the prisoner's ship and creating your character, the first thing you'll notice after stepping into the town of Sedanine is that a pop-up box will appear that says, "The prophecy has been severed." This is because every single NPC having to do with the main quest is dead, with the exception of Yagrum Bagarn, the last of the Dwemer. The corpses of these essential NPCs never despawn, so you can go loot all of them if you'd like. In effect, you begin the game in a world that is doomed to start with. After that, the second thing you'll notice is that you're constantly losing health. It's only a bit, but it keeps happening a little bit at a time. The longer you stay in one spot, the quicker your life will drain. If you let this health loss kill you, you'll soon find out the reason why your health is dropping. The way he moved gave me quite a start the first time I spotted him, scuttling around my dead body. He crawls inhumanly on his hands and feet, his arms and legs splayed out like a spider. We came to call the figure the Assassin, because he seems to wear a retextured version of the Dark Brotherhood armor from the Tribunal expansion pack, even though the expansion packs don't work in JVK. His texture is all black, like as if he were a hole in space. You usually only see him after death, crawling around and over your body just before the reload box would pop up and freeze everything around you. Occasionally, you might catch a glimpse of the assassin darting around a corner or crawling along a wall or ceiling. It made the game very difficult to play at night. Other than those two additions, the only noticeable difference between JVK and Vanilla Morrowind is that at night, during random intervals, every NPC in the game will go outside for a few minutes. During this time, the only thing they will say when hailed is "watch the sky." Once they return to their normal behavior, they act as though nothing just happened and return to their business. After a day or so of us playing JVK by ourselves and exploring the world of Vardenfell, a player on the mod board discovered a new NPC named Tierras, a male Dunmer in the temple known as Ghost Gate, which is the main gateway of the magical barrier called the Ghost Fence that separates the rest of Vardenfell from the Red Mountain, which is where the player goes to complete the main quest. Two things are notable about this NPC. The first is his robe, which is a unique article of clothing that was so lovingly rendered with twinkling stars all across it that one could mistake it for a torn-off chunk of the night sky. The second is that all of his dialogue, in addition to showing up in the dialogue box, is voiced, which is highly unusual for Morrowind NPCs. You can skip all of his dialogue if you wish, but all of his lines sound like they're being spoken in the default male Dunmer voice. Some people on the board thought that the voice was slightly different, but it was a very good imitation. I won't go too much into the details, but the questline that Tierra sends you on has to do with a dungeon simply referred to as the Citadel. Up until this point, the quests we had all done in JVK were all of a fairly generic discover the secret of the ancients type of flavor. The entrance of the dungeon related to the questline is on a small island to the west of Vardenfell proper. I eventually discovered and told the other users on the board that if you used the scroll of Vicarian Flight at the westmost point on the main landmass and jumped directly west, you would end up almost exactly at the island. Even though the dungeon is called the Citadel, it goes straight down. It dwarfs any other dungeon, both in size and difficulty. From a natural cave area, you'll proceed down into an ancestral tomb style of catacombs filled to the brim with skeletons and ghosts. You'll then traverse further down into a Daedric ruin area lined with demonic beings and architecture, and then further into a Dwemer ruin area, riddled with bronze chambers and mechanical contraptions. I made it down to the Dwemer ruins before I gave up. The creatures there were strong enough that a level 20 character would have to take care, and since you can't use the console in JVK, getting to even level 20 took a long while to get to. Since quick save and quick load are your only options and your files become lost whenever you restart the game, it was all too easy to get yourself into an impossible situation. That's what happened to me, and I just didn't have the energy or care to start over. Out of frustration, I deleted my install at JVK, and that was that. For the next few minutes, everything I'll describe is based on what those few who managed to get further reported. Past the Dwemer ruins, you'll find yourself in a level similar to the Dwemer ruins but darker. Rather than the usual bronze, all the surfaces, including those of the creatures and mechanical enemies, are black. The sounds of machinery are much louder than usual in this zone, and they continue to grow louder at random intervals the longer you stay in this area. There's also steam or fog everywhere, limiting your vision to about 10 in-game feet or so. If you were able to make it through all of this, you would reach a hall near the end of the dungeon that those who found it called the Portrait Room. Like the fire in Torches or other effects from early 3D games like Doom or Super Mario 64, the Portrait Room had picture frames that always directly faced the player, no matter how you looked at them. The images in the frames were always randomly chosen pictures from your My Pictures folder on your computer. On the board, the ones who got there had some fun posting screenshots of the Portrait Room, with various pictures in the frame, usually porn. At the end of the hall was a locked door. None of the users who made it to the Portrait Room could figure out how to open it, and after admitting defeat and returning to Tierras, everyone just found him saying "watch the sky" in his gravelly voice. On top of this, none of the other NPCs in the game would say anything. There was just a completely blank dialogue box with no options at all. They wouldn't even rattle off the usual canned audible greetings. The only exception was at night. Whenever they'd go out for a few minutes, they would still repeat it. "Watch the sky." At this point, one of the other players, a friend of mine on the board, noticed that the night sky was no longer the usual fantasy night sky of Tamriel, but had instead changed to a depiction of the real night sky, and it would move. From here on out, everything I'm about to tell you is based on what my friend on the board reported. He eventually got himself kicked off the board, but I kept in contact with him through email for as long as he would respond. According to him, after days of experimenting in-game as well as researching and asking others online about the constellation and planets, he was able to determine that the night sky, after it changes in JVK, starts around February of 2005. If the player died, loaded, or went back to the Citadel, it would start over. When the usual day sky graphics took over, the movement would be suspended until the stars appeared again. In the space of a single in-game night in JVK, the sky would move about 2 months ahead. Since the time scale of JVK was more or less that of any other game with real-time day-night cycles, that meant that a bit less than an hour in-game was equal to a 24-hour period, according to the movement of the night sky. My friend became convinced that the door would open based on some kind of celestial event. Of course, waiting for that meant leaving the game running, and of course that meant that the game couldn't be left unattended, thanks to our old friend the assassin. My friend decided that he'd hang out and play JVK for a whole day, just to see if anything happened. That would be about a year's worth of movement, he told me. Here's the post my friend made at the end of his experiment. I loaded in Satanin, where it all starts. It wasn't too bad, just had to check in now and then to move around and heal, to make sure I wasn't dying. But check this out. 24 hours exactly in and the assassin learned a new trick. He screams. I was reading and all of a sudden this crazy loud shriek just about makes me crap myself. It's like something out of a horror movie. I look up and there he is, just crouched down right in front of me. Of course, the second I moved my character, he ran off. When I went back down to the portrait room, the door was still locked. Damn it. A bit later, my friend came to the decision that he needed to wait 3 days. 3 years in game. The original PM advising us to try DOSBox showed up in February of 2008, just 3 years later, so his logic at least made some kind of sense. He wrote to me at the end of his experiment. After the first shriek, the assassin stops hitting you out of nowhere. Now he'll shriek, and if you don't move your character or mouse for a few seconds after that, then he hits you. I think whoever made the mod was trying to help. At night, I've got my headphones on, and I was just kind of dozing off. When the assassin wakes me up with a shriek, I jiggle the mouse and I'm good. That post was 2 days into the experiment from his laptop, and once it was over, fuck, so fucking done. So I wait the 3 days, right? And right after the fucking assassin makes me jiggle the mouse, he shrieks again. So I look and everyone in town is outside. They're all saying watch the sky, but I don't see anything though. But then the game starts to get dark, like really dark. I turn up the brightness all the way on my monitor and I can still barely see anything. I can see other people in the game, little figures running around in the distance, just running back and forth. If I try to get close, they run off. Now I was trying to sleep so the lights are off, and this is kind of creepy. I don't want to get up and turn on my light because I don't want to miss anything, but nothing fucking happens. Eventually, I go back to the Citadel. It's still dark and I gotta swim, and the whole time I can see all these little guys swimming around me, just barely there. I make it to the Citadel and it's normal light inside, so I get worried. Sure enough, the portrait door is still fucking closed. I go outside and it's all starting over. So that's it, I'm fucking going to bed and I'm fucking done. The end. After this, 2 things happened. First, another one of the people who made it to the portrait room claimed that the assassin was showing up in his vanilla install of Morrowind. Supposedly, if you reinstalled Morrowind on a different folder than the one that JVK was on, you could have a normal install of Morrowind alongside JVK without the assassin showing up. He chalked it up to an overreactive imagination at first, but he reported a couple of really big scares with a black figure crawling right at him, as well as seeing him waiting for him just around a corner before scuttling off. Another user who reached the portrait room started a regular game of Morrowind, but never saw the assassin for sure. It was always just a couple of maybes, late at night, and always from a distance. The second thing is that my friend started getting really abusive and short-tempered on the board, although he stopped talking about JVK entirely. His behavior got so bad that he was soon banned from the board. I didn't hear anything from my friend for a couple of weeks after that happened, so I shot him another email. This was part of his reply. I know I shouldn't, but with classes out, I've got some time. So I started JVK up again. It's almost 2011, and I think I've got the sleep madness, but stuff is happening. It's still dark. Once it gets dark, it never gets any lighter. It stays like that. The people moved a few months ago. Everyone in Seidanin just went to that little bandit cave and moved in. They killed the bandits inside, and now they're just standing around inside. They don't say anything anymore. They don't do anything when you click on them. I quick-saved and killed one. And he just stood there until he died without fighting back. And it's like that everywhere. You have to walk since the quick travel people are all in the caves now. But all the cities and towns are just deserted. All the people are in the caves and tombs. Everyone in Vivek is down in the sewers. I'm going to Ghost Gate next. I want to see if Tiaris is still there. I'll tell you what he says when I get there. I replied and said I wanted to see what Tiaris had to say too, and waited for a day. When I didn't get a reply, I mailed him back. And a couple of hours later, my friend replied, Sorry, I totally forgot. So it's 2014 now. Since it's always night, the stars are always moving. The whole screen is dark, but you can still see the brightest stars moving around. Tiaris was gone. Everyone in Ghost Gate was gone. I don't know where they went. They're not in any of the nearby caves. But there's new stuff. People still don't say anything, but their eyes are bleeding. It's so dark that even with a light spell, you have to get right up against them to see. But there they are. Little dark streaks coming down from their eyes. I think I've got to be getting close. I know this is stupid and I know there's no way the payoff is going to be worth it. But I just wanted to be able to say I stuck it out. I got that one during the day. Later at night, I received a follow-up email. Some of the plants aren't moving right. It's pissing me off. If this keeps up, I won't be able to keep track anymore. It's almost 2015 now, I think. Fuck. I just now noticed that there aren't any more monsters. I'm completely alone outside now. The main quest people's bodies are still lying around, though. I went to check on them. I don't need the headphones anymore, so I just leave them off. When he shrieks, it's like he's screaming right into my ear. I think I even kind of anticipate it. He's around a lot more now, a lot closer. He's different from the other people who started showing up, remember? They keep running around just where I can barely see them. I have to admit, it's kind of creepy at night. Sometimes when I go to the bathroom or whatever, I swear I can see something out of the corner of my eye. I'm keeping on all the lights now. I sent him a reply, jokingly telling him to get some real sleep, and left it at that. 2 mornings later, I found this in my email. It was the last thing I've received from him. After this, he stopped responding completely. I just got up from a fucked up dream, I think. The assassin shrieked at me, and when I opened my eyes, he was right there, crouched over me. His arms and legs were longer, like a spider's. I tried to push him away, but when I touched him, my hands just went inside, and I couldn't get them loose again, like he was made of tar or something. Then I woke up. I thought. He was gone, but when I looked at the monitor, I wasn't where I was. I was in the Corpusarium with Yagrum. For once the light was okay, and I could see Yagrum all bloated on those mechanical spider legs. I sat down at the computer and he started talking to me. Not in a box, but really talking to me, in Tiaris' voice. He knew things about me. He told me things I had never told anyone, some things I totally forgot about. He told me that almost nobody had made it this far, and that the door would open up soon. I just had to hang on a little while longer. He said I would know when it was time. He said I might be the first one to see what was inside. And then I woke up for real, but I was at the computer. I still wasn't where I was. I'm swimming out to the Citadel Island. and I can hear this tapping. It's at my window. It's over to the left, so I'm sending you this because I left my laptop by my bed to the right. Just a little. Like he's knocking his finger against the glass. I might still be dreaming now. So I guess this is the end of my story. I know there's a few other stories floating around about the mod, but this is the only one I know to be true as far as it goes. I deleted my copy of JVK pretty much after I gave up, but I'd like to get the mod again if anyone still has a copy of the file. I'd like to see some of this for myself.